Welcome into Feeling Good Feels Good. I am your host, Dr. Tripp. This is the podcast where we make feeling good feel easy. We do so by making well-being accessible, taking topics that seem complex or confusing and making them extremely simple, as well as taking everyday overlooked household items and habits and revisiting the power and the simple things that keep us alive and well. Today, we're talking about one of the absolute hardest things for humans to do, even when it's easy. And somehow, even when these are low-level difficulty, they still create lots of strain in our life. Most of the time, this is what keeps us back from hitting our goals, feeling how we want to feel, and accomplishing what we want to accomplish. We're talking about habits, but we're going to make breaking old habits and creating new ones simple and reduce strain. By the end of this episode, you will have an idea about how to break old habits and easily, consistently create new ones. By this point in the new year, most New Year's resolutions have already failed. But I want to be clear about something. Most of the time, it is not 100% your fault. It's usually not a lack of motivation. Habitual behavior is baked into how humans survive, how we conserve energy and navigate complicated surroundings. So in some way, when you're trying to create a new habit or break an old one, you're actually fighting against your brain's natural survival mechanisms. But today we're going to make this easier by understanding what we're actually dealing with. We're going to talk about what a habit actually is, what the hardest ones to stop and start are. We will dig into how the brain controls habits, how long it really takes for a habit to stick, and why your environment plays a much bigger role than we actually give it credit for. Towards the end of this episode, I will give my own habit-forming recipe, tricks, and hacks that I use to make new habits stick, and stick for good. So instead of hyping you up, or giving you more motivation, or making you feel bad or shaming you about not being able to do things, we're going to do something much more effective. We're going to help you understand what habits actually are, and how to understand them well enough so that you can work with them, break old ones and create new ones. So I want you to start thinking about those habits you want to change, let go of, or create. And let's get started.
Welcome to Feeling Good Feels Good with Dr. Tripp.
Welcome to a state of feeling good. It's how we live and how you could. Just know it's how we're all meant to be. If things are off, listen to your body. It can tell us exactly what we need. Physical, emotional, nutritional, or mentally. No need to worry, it's reached accessibly. No matter how you felt or what you've heard, well-being's for everyone, it's what you deserve. Ease and joy are yours once it's understood. No need to fear, because feeling good feels good.
The information in this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not medical advice and should not be interpreted as a diagnosis, treatment, or prescription. Listening to this podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult your own healthcare providers before making any changes to your health, medications, or treatment plans. The opinions shared here are based on clinical experience, research, and professional knowledge, but they may not apply to any specific situations. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to these terms.
Welcome back to Feeling Good Feels Good. I am so happy all of you are here. I hope you are developing the habit of listening to our episodes, sharing them with your friends and family, liking, commenting, and sharing. We are seeing the growth of the podcast, and we are so grateful. And we hope this is because so many of you are benefiting from the information that we are sharing. So what is a habit? Technically, it's not motivation. It is not discipline. And it's not simply just something that you do every day. A habit is a neural shortcut. Basically, the brain recognizes familiar behavior and hands it over to automation. Our brains are like prediction machines. And the primary job is not happiness, is not success, it's not fulfillment, it's efficiency and survival. The brain wants to keep you alive. That is its main job. So don't worry, we are not going to stop the brain from keeping you alive. We're just going to help it create new neural pathways new neural shortcuts that allow you to have more happiness, success, and fulfillment. Basically, what happens in habit is that control shifts away from the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision making, planning, and effort, and the control shifts to deeper parts of your brain, especially an area called the basal ganglia. This is the same system involved in movement patterns, routines like walking, and quick reflexes and responses. This is why habits feel so automatic and so hard to change. They're literally wired into the deep part of your brain that controls things like a reflex without thinking about decision making or planning. Basically, this is a way for your body to conserve energy. Our brain only takes about 2% of our body weight, but it uses about 20% of our body's energy. So being able to have patterns that work or keep you alive, or that have worked in the past and kept you alive once, rather than thinking about every action in your day-to-day, conserves a lot of energy for our body. This is why you might feel like, I'm spending so much energy trying to change this habit, but it's not sticking. Even small things like drinking an extra glass of water can feel very strenuous because we're using so much more energy to shift the way that we're using our brain in those moments. Humans evolved this way on purpose. If humans had to concentrate on how to walk, gather food, respond to danger, and consciously think about everything in their day-to-day, we would not have survived very long. Habits, being on autopilot, freed up space in the brain and energy for finding new things, scanning for threat detection, and even creativity. So habits were just a feature of evolution to help keep humans alive and well. Something very important to understand that most people miss is that habits are really pattern recognition. It's not behavior repetition. Our brain sees a cue that triggers a response. Basically, our brain is responding to a cue in a way where it can predict the outcome. Again, this part of our brain does not like to use energy to create ingenuity. It's just concentrated on survival. So if I see a cue, my brain's going to trigger a response to that cue with whatever it knows worked before. And that's how habits come out in our day-to-day life. And this is why bad habits persist even when they don't feel good. It's not about optimizing happiness. It's about optimizing predictability. So even though you might feel bad, you're still alive. And that's all your brain cares about for the most part. So if you think you just need more motivation, more willpower to override an automated system deeply ingrained in our brains throughout human evolution, it's just not a fair fight for you. Once we understand that habits are neural shortcuts, we can start to learn how to break those old shortcuts and create new ones. For most of humanity, survival was fragile. Calories were scarce, danger was constant, and using too much energy or thinking about anything other than survival could get you and your family killed. So the brain evolved to favor repeatable, energy-efficient, predictable behavior. Hunter-gatherers did not wake up every morning and decide how to live. They followed routines that kept them alive. Where to walk, how to hunt, how to prepare food, not as conscious choices, but as patterns encoded in humanity because they worked and we lived. We can see how this is translated into modern society. Daily life is highly ritualized. Whether you realize it or not, you have daily rituals. It's how your brain is wired because predictability reduces risk. So our deepest core need is to live and survive. So this is very, very ingrained in what we do. Over the course of history, habits leading to survival continued, although the way that they ensured survival started to change. If you look at Roman legions or armies, a lot of the power didn't really come from these individuals having strength or creativity. It came from obsessive repetition that was trained into them. Basically, the soldiers drilled movements until they became automatic, even in battle. There was no time to think, and the body reacted with habit. So habit was still survival, but what habits were used to survive has evolved and changed over the course of history. If we look at modern society, we think of mastery as happening after 10,000 hours of doing one thing over and over and over again. So even in today's world, creating neural shortcuts and habits are what create success. and survival in today's world is more about success than ever. So what are we up against in today's world? Evolution never predicted modern abundance. We live in environments with endless calories, constant stimulation, artificial light, and endless digital rewards. But our brains are still running on software that was created for scarcity and survival. So when a habit forms around scrolling, snacking, procrastinating, or other forms of stress relief, it's not necessarily because we're lazy. It's because when we do things that reliably reduce discomfort, the brain logs it as useful and creates a shortcut for it. This is why habits don't necessarily respond well to shame. Shame was not the teacher of what habits should stick and stay. Survival was. So when we understand this, the conversation around habit can shift. And having a shift can really lighten the pressure or stress to somebody who maybe hasn't had success at creating new habits in the past. They're not necessarily personal failures. These are ancient neurological strategies hardwired in us through evolution, doing their best to exist in a modern world. So let's take a look at some habits that might be tough to stop or tough to start. Not all habits are created equal. There are some that are more difficult to implement and some that should be simpler to implement. Our brain loves dopamine. So one thing that we're going to need to look at is reward timing. Our brain does love dopamine and it is incredibly impatient. Habits with immediate rewards, think social media scrolling, binge watching, or snacking on sweets, they stick quickly. And habits with delayed rewards, like exercising or saving money, are actually much harder to lock in. Evolution wired us to chase instant gains because back in the day when humans evolved, waiting could mean starving or even being eaten or killed. So even though the modern world has changed completely, the wiring has not. So reward timing is something to be aware of when we're looking at which habits are going to be more easy or difficult to get rid of or keep. And we will have some tricks for how to work around this in this episode. Stress and emotional load do play a part in whether habits, generally, whether easy or hard, have a chance to stick. When life is chaotic, our brain will more quickly revert to autopilot, our neural shortcuts. That means when we're low on energy, when we're stressed out, those old habits can resurface easily, even when we're trying really hard to create new ones. Have you ever beaten yourself up or heard somebody else do this? I spent all of this money and I still can't save. I'm in such a bad financial situation and I still can't save. What's wrong with me? I bought all these healthy groceries and I still ordered ice cream. What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with this person. They're up against the fight even more. Remember, when we are stressed and tired, our brain is going to more quickly and strongly revert to those old habits, autopilot. And that's why cycles feel so hard to break. We become stressed from the poor habits, and the stress created holds us back into the cycle. But there are ways to take a step out. Another thing to keep in mind before we get into the tools of creating and breaking habits is understanding that complexity matters. Tiny habits like drinking water or brushing teeth may be easier. There's medium habits like running a certain amount of times a week or practicing a new skill. But big habits like writing a novel, mastering an instrument, or restructuring your whole life demand so many coordinated working parts. We talked about our brain, but our environment and our emotions. Everything must be fine-tuned towards these bigger, more difficult habits. And one more theme that you're going to hear throughout this episode is identity. The brain also loves consistency. So when we think of ourselves as the kind of person who procrastinates, or I'm not the kind of person who runs, or I am the kind of person who saves money, those identifying thoughts and statements start to build a picture of how to respond to certain cues. Habits are not just behaviors, they're reinforcements of self-perception. Remember, our brain loves consistency. So if we see ourselves as somebody who constantly overeats, your brain is going to deliver that in action by making you crave sweets. And when your brain is on autopilot, it's going to operate as somebody who's constantly eating sugary foods. But the good news is you can change that. It takes time and consistent effort, but it is absolutely changeable. One of the core values of my businesses is called act your outcomes. Basically, we decide what we want to be, who we want to be first, and let our habits form from that. Instead of fighting against an identity of I'm somebody who eats sugar, but I'm going to work really hard to stop, shifting the identity to somebody who makes healthy choices allows your brain to follow that identity on a consistent basis. Even with things that you've struggled with throughout the course of your life, through shifting your identity and constantly reminding yourself about this, you can make lasting change. Another example, if I say I want to start getting up early, but I also tell myself I'm just a terrible morning person, there's going to be so much inner conflict and contradiction that the brain is just going to stress out and revert back to those old habits and autopilots. But if I start to shift my identity to somebody who gets a lot of stuff done in the morning, when I am tired, when my brain is on autopilot, it's going to respond by doing the things that somebody who has productive mornings would do, like getting out of bed, doing work, or whatever morning routine that person wants. So remember the identity, and you can choose any identity that you want, and we will start to form clues around this identity. This is one of the main tricks in my habit creating formula that we will get to at the end of this episode. We've seen these examples in pop culture. Think about Homer Simpson. His identity is somebody who acts before they think, relies on impulse, doesn't take care of themselves or their family, and all of his actions follow suit from this character. Or if you've seen Breaking Bad, think about how Walter White cannot stop cooking. He has shifted his identity from school teacher to drug chemist. So even when he doesn't need to take these risks anymore, because of his new identity, he cannot stop himself. So I want you to start thinking about certain identities that you want. This can be a version of yourself in the future. You can think about somebody else that you admire and think, what would they do in this situation? Or even create an avatar or a cartoon character. You can craft this any way that you would like. And having this identity is crucial to making lasting change, not just for your mindset, but neurologically how our brain operates. It loves consistency, and it will not make habit changing easy if you are trying to operate in a way that does not match your self-identity. So how do we work with this information? We can build cues, routines, and rewards. Every habit follows a loop. A trigger sparks a behavior, and a reward reinforces it. So if we design the loops properly, the basal ganglia, the deep part of your brain we talked about earlier, will still take over, but these new behaviors can become automatic. Gentle cues work much better than overmotivation or stressful pep talks. For example, if you want to start a running habit, leaving your running shoes by the door, sleeping in your running clothes, and waking up all ready to go are cues about your new identity and indicators on how to respond when there's a decision for your brain to make. If we just shame ourselves and rely on motivation and pep talks, it actually can trigger stress. Stress can trigger our amygdala, our brain's alarm system, which takes over and sends us back to old habits. So some people may willpower themselves to make change, and it can work. It's just a hard road. And neurologically, there are faster, easier ways. If you want to use willpower and motivation and shame, by all means, I encourage you to do so. If this way feels easier, I encourage you to try this. It's not about being right. It's about finding different ways to support different people and helping them feel good and hit their goals. So how long do we think it takes for a habit to become a habit? You might have heard 3 weeks, but the average time for a habit to become ingrained is actually 66 days. So over 2 months. So if you've tried something for 3 weeks and you thought this should be automatic by now, give yourself a break. Don't take it so hard on yourself. Changing the wiring of the brain and shifting our identity is hard, but if you continue to do it, it will happen. The same way habits are hard to break neurologically, the reverse is also true. If you stick to the protocols and your plan, that will also be true. You will make change. Another thing that can be more important than just sheer willpower is your environment. We already started touching on this subject, talking about leaving shoes at the front door, but there's so much more room for creativity that you can bring to this process based on your desired habits. You could have the strongest intentions in the world, But if your environment is stacked against you, the habits won't stick, or it will take so much effort to make them stick. And with that much effort to carry out a habit, your brain might reject it and say, this is too much energy for me to use this response on a regular basis. Remember, our brain is trying to conserve energy. So even if you do something for 66 days, if it's a slog and a fight and you're not starting to create an environment that's conducive to this habit, it still may be a little harder for it to stick or take a little longer. We look at physical cues. Think about a simple one, eating healthy. If my snacks and chips are on the coffee table or I watch TV, there's very little resistance and a lot of ease and a lot of predictability that I'm going to have a reward from eating these tasty, delicious snacks. It's probably going to be very difficult to put those snacks away, go in the refrigerator, take out ingredients, and cook a whole healthy meal. Maybe I can do this a few times, but if I'm trying to start eating healthy, that's going to be a very tough road. But if we leave those unhealthy foods in places that are more unreachable, harder to get to, and we start to leave out healthy foods that are convenient. Apples on the table, maybe a meal prep, or if you want to start having meals delivered or cooked for you to get the ball rolling so that there's less roadblocks, that can work too. Or if you want to go to a gym and you want to get in shape, even if you had the best gym in the whole world, but it was an hour away and you had to drive through traffic, that would be harder than starting to work out in your own home. Now, a gym environment is going to be more conducive to working out than your home, where there's lots of options for relaxing. So ideally, if that's your goal, you would find one that's close, easy to get to, and that you feel good in, because social cues are also important. If everyone at your office hangs out and has fun at the vending machine with all the candy at 3 p.m., as humans who are driven to social connection, we are going to follow the same thing. This one can be very difficult for certain people in certain situations. So I don't mean to say this lightly. Sometimes we may not even be able to change our social cues right away. So using things like physical cues, reducing friction, and increasing convenience can be helpful. Obviously, if you surround yourself with people who have the identity and the habits that you're looking to build, it's going to be much easier. But I understand that that is not feasible in every situation. If it is, you're going to have an easier time, and I'd encourage you to get around people who are doing the things that you have the desires to do as well. So there are 6 main tools that I use when creating a habit. Some of these we touched on already, including the first one, acting your outcomes or acting your identity. Remember, align your habits with how you see yourself. Or what I should say is create the vision for how you want to see yourself or your future self, and your habits will follow suit. This one is really important. An example might be, if you want to be extremely successful in your career, or the identity that you choose for yourself is somebody who is extremely successful in their career, climbing the ladder at work, getting promotions and raises, look at the people who have done that and look at some of your habits. Somebody who is hitting those new levels in their career, what time are they going to show up to the office? What is their desk going to look like? Is it going to be cluttered? How do they present themselves in the world? How do they talk to people? What do they eat for lunch? And this is not to shame you. This actually takes some of the shame out of it. Rather than trying to pull your current self into a situation that doesn't match your perspective, you just shift your perspective to your desired outcome, your self perspective. And it takes a lot of the personal roadblocks out of that. For example, when buying clothes, oh no, should I wear this? Oh no, should I buy that? I can't wear this or I can't wear that. Just picture the person that you want to be and ask yourself, what would they wear? Or writing an email, oh, I shouldn't say that, or should I say this? What should I say here? Rather than ruminating and worrying, just picture the person that you desire to be and think, what would they say? And just press send. So acting your outcomes is huge. I also want you to start leaving clues. These can be things like your clothes, okay? I want to be a person who is a runner. Am I gonna wear jeans to go for a run? Probably not. I might start wearing running clothes. Or I want extremely good technical skills. Am I going to have old equipment, or I want to advance in a technology career? Okay, am I going to be reading books about sports or technology? Am I going to spend my time watching fiction movies or documentaries about technological advances? If you want to be more organized, leave clues like a journal, a planner, or cleaning out the apps on your phone. These moments of motivation are fleeting, but when they come, you can use them to create consistency. The motivation will not create the habit, but it can be used to create an environment in that moment that will lead to the habit. Starting small is something that I believe in. Remember, think about the running example. I'm not going to just go run 10 miles. I'm going to start by putting running shoes by my door, putting on running clothes in the morning, and walking outside and maybe jogging around the block. I'm going to put those running shoes back where they were and have my running clothes ready the next morning and continue this and build up my running habit over time. Thinking that it's all going to change at once is just demotivating. So expect to start small and expect it to take a long time, but give yourself rewards. Remember, our brain loves rewards. So after you accomplish something, like going for the run, maybe you have a treat like a baked good and an espresso or a hot chocolate. When you accomplish the habit or the routine that you are trying to reinforce, you must reward yourself. Abstaining from reward, while seen as a noble activity and a strong sign of willpower, it can actually make creating the habit even harder. Understand that days will be missed. Know that you will not be perfect. So when you get off track, forgive yourself quickly and go right back to that identity of somebody who accomplishes the things that you want to accomplish. Know that days will be missed. Know that things won't be perfect. Expect those to happen, because if this is who you're going to be for the rest of your life, there's going to be days where you're off track. So get used to it and build up a tolerance for it and shift back as quickly as you can. Lastly, one of my favorite tools is habit stacking. Attaching new habits to something that our brain already does automatically is a great cheat code. For example, if I'm constantly dehydrated and I know I need to drink more water, but for some reason I just can't get started, I'm going to put my water glass next to something that I already do every day. Maybe I put one glass next to my toothbrush because I know I brush my teeth every day. So I know every time I brush my teeth from now on, I'm also going to have a glass of water. Maybe I put it next to my lunchbox or something that I'm doing throughout the middle of the day that's already ingrained. I don't have to put forth effort to create this new habit. It's already there. I can just attach the new habit to this. And you can use this in many different ways, and it is extremely effective for creating more ease in your new habit and lifestyle. So I can't wait for you all to get started on this. Please share your new habits, share your habit stacking, your cues, your identities, whatever creative things come from this episode. I would love to hear some feedback of what ideas this triggered and how things have started. Pick your identity. You absolutely can make this shift. Best of luck, and I can't wait to see you all next time on Feeling Good Feels Good.